Let's just dive right in with a question that honestly gets to the very heart of pretty much every relationship. So, when someone you love tries to do something, right? And it just doesn't work out. The gesture falls flat, the plan goes totally wrong. What do you focus on? The messed up result? Or the reason they were even trying in the first place? And that question right there is exactly what we're going to dig into today. Welcome. We're exploring this really powerful idea called the architecture of love. It's this whole way of looking at things that suggests the foundation of our connections isn't really built on perfect actions, but on the unseen, heartfelt intentions that are driving them. We're going to see why focusing on this inner blueprint can literally transform how we experience our relationships. All right, so to really get this, we've got to start at the beginning with the foundation. This first part introduces the core metaphor that's going to guide this entire way of thinking, the blueprint of love. So think about it like this. Just like any building has a detailed blueprint that dictates its entire structure before anyone even lays a single brick, our relationships have this invisible framework. What we actually see, the words, the gifts, all the actions, that's just the finished building. But the real strength, the actual design, well, that comes from this unseen architecture, right? The thoughts, the feelings, the intent. Okay, so here's the official definition, but let's break it down. This internal architecture is that invisible structure holding everything up. And what this really means is that love isn't just, a checklist of things that went right or perfectly executed gestures. It's more of a state of being. It's about the quality of your intention, how sincere you are when you want to bring someone joy or comfort. And that is completely separate from whether you actually succeed or fail in the attempt. So what is it that really connects us? Well, first up, it's our internal stuff. Our thoughts, our feelings, that's the real bedrock of the connection. Second, the actions we take are really just expressions of those deeper currents, which makes our inner world the true architect of the relationship. And yeah, sometimes the construction crew, our actions, they totally mess up. But that doesn't mean the blueprint itself was flawed, right? And that, right there, leads us to probably the most relatable part of this whole idea. What happens when the construction fails? When the thing you do doesn't match the loving plan you had in your head? In this next section, we'll explore exactly that with two really powerful stories of loving intent. Okay, first story. And this is a classic, something filled with so much warmth and care. A mother decides she's going to cook her son's favorite dish. And this isn't really about the food itself. It's a ritual, an act of love. It's a way to communicate comfort and that feeling of home without even saying a word. The intention is just crystal clear. But of course, life happens, right? A moment of distraction, a simple mix-up in the kitchen, and bam, she grabs the salt instead of the sugar. So the meal, this physical thing that was meant to show her love, is just totally ruined. The outcome is the complete opposite of what she wanted. But here's the thing, and this is so important. The thought behind it? That's completely untouched. The blueprint is still perfect. Her intention was an act of pure love and comfort, and that internal architecture is totally separate from the salty, inedible dish on the table. The mistake was just a random screw-up. It had nothing to do with how she feels. And this quote just nails the choice the son has in that moment. He can get upset about the salty food, or he can respond to the love that was trying to make it. The things that really cause pain in a relationship, indifference, neglect, carelessness, none of that was in the picture. The only thing in that kitchen was a loving intention that just went a little sideways in the execution. He chose to see the blueprint. All right, let's look at another story, one that kind of scales things up a bit. A boyfriend is secretly planning a surprise anniversary trip. I mean, we're talking weeks of secret planning, booking everything, arranging every single detail. The sheer effort here says everything you need to know about his intention to create this amazing, memorable experience. And yet again, the real world has other plans. Some external factor, a booking error at the hotel that is completely out of his control, just derails the entire thing. They show up all excited for the big surprise, only to find out there's no room. And just like that, this huge romantic gesture completely deflates. It turns into this stressful, super disappointing night. But just like with the mom's cooking, what about the thought? What happened to the intention? Absolutely nothing. It is still there, perfectly preserved. That singular, clear intention to design this beautiful, romantic experience for his partner is completely intact. The logistics were a disaster, sure, but the love didn't fail. Not at all. That blueprint was rock solid. Okay, So this brings us to a really crucial turning point. In both of these stories, the son and the girlfriend are faced with a choice. And look, this isn't about pretending you're not disappointed. That feeling is totally real. It's about making a conscious choice. Where are you going to put your focus? On the error or on the effort? It's about learning to see the true design. This line right here really gets to the absolute heart of it all. A mistake made in the act of loving someone is not an act against them. It's not an attack, it's not a betrayal, it's just a human moment. And recognizing the thought behind a flawed gesture, that is an act of love in and of itself. It's choosing to see your partner with clarity, with charity, and with grace. Now, this is so important because we need to understand the difference between two very different kinds of hurt. On one side, you've got true damage. This comes from someone being careless or selfish or even malicious. That's a real crack in the foundation of their relationship. But on the other side, you have what we can call accidental impact. This comes from a loving intention that just had a flawed execution. Yeah, it might sting, but it's just an unfortunate outcome. It's not a structural failure. The blueprint is still sound. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do we actually do this in real life? How do we build a relationship that actually prioritizes the blueprint over the flawed construction? Let's get into the practical tools and look at 4 pillars that can help us build a truly resilient connection. So here they are, 4 pillars that can help us build this kind of trust. They are: assume the best, value imperfect action, prioritize repair over perfection, and encourage shared vulnerability. Think of this as the framework for building a relationship based on grace, not on constant critique. Let's dig into what each of these really means. So, pillar number 1, assume the best. This creates what you might call a safety net in the relationship. When you automatically believe your partner's heart is in the right place, you stop keeping score. A mistake just becomes a lapse in capacity. They were tired, they were distracted, or maybe they just had bad luck. It's not a sign that they don't care about you. It's a huge shift away from that scorekeeping mindset where every single action gets weighed and judged. Next up, pillar 2 is all about valuing imperfect action. You know, a kind of clumsy poem written from the heart, that is worth so much more than a perfect generic card you just buy at the store. Why? Because it's real. Authenticity always wins against a polished but impersonal performance. Okay, and that leads us to the 3rd pillar, choosing repair over perfection. When something goes wrong, the goal isn't to win an argument or prove who was right. The whole point is to reconnect with each other. It's about asking, hey, how can we fix this together? Instead of getting stuck on, well, whose fault was it? And that brings us to the last pillar, number 4, shared vulnerability. This is the idea that being real with each other is so much safer than trying to be perfect. It means being able to say, man, I tried to do this amazing thing for you and I totally messed it up and I feel awful about it. And then having your partner respond with, I see how hard you tried, and honestly, that is what matters to me. This creates a space where it's safe to try and fail, which is just essential for any kind of growth. So let's wrap this all up. By using these 4 pillars, we learn to trust the blueprint, that internal architecture of love and good intentions. And when we do that, we're building our relationships on the strongest foundation possible, creating a connection that isn't so fragile or dependent on everything going perfectly all the time. All right, so what's the big takeaway here? First, learn to prioritize intention. When something goes a little sideways, make your first question, what was the blueprint here? What were they trying to do for me? Second, you've got to release the outcome. Free yourself and your partner from the heavy burden of needing perfect execution. And finally, learn to treasure the thought. That's the real gift. A relationship built on trusting each other's good intentions can truly weather just about anything because it's built on something that can't be shaken. You know, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? We aren't defined by our screw-ups. We are the sum of our intentions, our efforts, and the love that drove us to act in the first place. That is the true measure of who we are, of our heart. So I'm going to leave you with one last question to think about. Just think about your own life for a second, your relationships. Is there some salty meal or a failed vacation that maybe you've been holding on to? Whose blueprint, whose loving intention will you choose to see more clearly today?